Thanks for joining us. Today I'm joined by Daniel McCauley and Steve Weiner, two of our second-year students here at Wharton, who are founders of Wharton Fintech. My name's Mary Ellen Lamb, and I am Deputy Vice Dean overseeing admissions, financial aid, and career management. And I'm particularly excited about this topic because it hits on so many areas that I am overseeing here at Wharton. I'm going to ask the guys to introduce themselves, if you would, and then we'll get started. Daniel, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Daniel McCauley, second-year MBA student. I co-founded Wharton Fintech with Steve when I got to campus last year. Before I came to Wharton, I was a financial engineer. I worked for a company that was writing algorithms to predict stock prices for hedge funds. I came to Wharton with the goal of becoming a data scientist, and I spent my summer at a fintech startup out in the Bay Area called Wealthfront, doing data science for them.
That's terrific. Steve?
I spent 6 years in the U.S. Navy driving submarines all over the world, and I left the Navy on a Friday and started working on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs on a Monday. And it was a pretty stark transition, and I found myself researching Bitcoin and doing a venture market analysis for Goldman, which was very interesting as sort of the impetus around co-founding Wharton Fintech and getting more involved with the fintech space. I spent my summer at Google on the payments team and looking forward to graduating in May.
Very good. Just to set the stage a little bit, Daniel, could you talk to us a little bit about what's the definition of fintech? What is it we're talking about when you use those words?
What is fintech?
Yes.
It's funny, that's the question that we got repeatedly
Yeah.
when we started Wharton Fintech last year. And it was the impetus for the first blog post that we wrote trying to address the question, partly because we could just send people the link instead of having to explain it.
Right.
But the answer to your question is that fintech is an industry of companies that are using technology to not only make existing financial systems more efficient, but create entirely new financial systems. Now, that's a pretty broad statement and doesn't give you a lot of information. So what does that mean practically? It means innovation in insurance, banking, whether that's consumer banking or business banking, blockchain, automated investing, personal wealth management. Anywhere where money is involved, fintech is innovating.
That's awesome. So, Steve, could you talk a little bit then about building on the definition that he just gave? What was when you first got here, what was the need you saw that you wanted to address and that Wharton kind of gave you the platform to do?
When I was at Goldman, I really got interested, like I said, in Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And when I got to Wharton, I really wanted to explore that a little bit further through the wealth of professional organizations that we have on campus, maybe do some research with a professor or take a class. And the needs weren't really being met in an industry that was really kind of taking off. My metric for that was just how much news was being generated. So I had Google Alerts set up for fintech and Bitcoin and blockchain, which is part of my strategy for learning a lot about the industry. And the buzz and the froth in the industry was really picking up. So I started to talk about it during preterm when I first got on campus with a lot of my classmates who would say, "What are you interested in? What do you want to get involved with here at Wharton?" And I would say, "Fintech." And they said, "Well, what is that?" And I would explain it to them before we had the link that explained it. And they would say, "Oh, well, I used to work at a big credit card company in their innovations group. Is that fintech?" And I said, "Absolutely,
Yeah.
come with me."
Right.
And when Daniel and I first met at the Founders Retreat, we talked about this as being sort of latent demand. The industry was already taking off, and Wharton, we thought, should have a voice and should have an opinion. So that was the sort of the genesis of the organization. And we just started from first principles. We wanted to add value to the industry, be a participant, be a connector, and we did that through a couple of different channels, which we love to talk to you about.
Oh, that's good. Well, so I'm going to stay with you for a second. Can you talk a little bit more when you said, "Come with me"? Mm-hmm. How many people do you have now that are interested? And give me some of the highlights. Talk a little bit about some of those successes that you found.
Sure. So our first meeting, so to speak, where I remember we were in 2401 Walnut, sort of the co-working space of MBAs over in Center City. We got people together who this was the, hey, please, just come to our first meeting. And we had probably about 15 students, maybe something like that. Most of them stayed throughout the whole session. And we just talked about trends and what Daniel and I were seeing and, how we thought Wharton could participate in fintech. And so from those early days, which was last August 2014, to today, we've grown the organization to well over 250 members, active members, with many, many more that subscribe to our newsletter, which is free, and we put it out weekly. We've got almost 3,000 Twitter followers, which is where we do a lot of our interacting with the industry. And proud to say that we have over 5,000 monthly unique visitors to our site, typically looking at the blog and the content that we generate that is original thought and it's curated from our members. So
That's terrific.
And what's also unique about our membership is that it's interdisciplinary. So the people who are parts of Wharton Fintech aren't just MBA students. Now, a lot of them are because they're our colleagues and we see them in class every single day, but we represent all schools at the University of Pennsylvania, which is a great opportunity to interact with engineers, law school students, undergrads, and that's where we really think we differentiate ourselves because this is a community effort more so than just an MBA special interest group.
That's terrific. From putting on my admissions hat for a minute, if I could, Daniel, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I know with some of the inbound traffic you get on the blog and through Twitter and various places, what are some of the questions and concerns you hear prospective students raising, and how have you been able to address some of those on our behalf?
Yeah, so there's a fair amount of people that reach out to us to say, I currently work in finance. Maybe it's banking, maybe it's corporate finance, maybe it's one of the big credit card companies, as Steve mentioned. And I hear a lot about fintech. I've been thinking about getting an MBA. I'm not really sure, but I don't really want to stay in traditional finance. Is an MBA even the right choice for me? When people are talking about fintech, the answer is yes. And the answer is come to Wharton because of what we've built here, because of the community, because of the brand. There's a lot that you can bring from your old life in banking or somewhere else in finance to bear on a startup that is attacking a problem using technology. For example, I mentioned that I was writing algorithms to help hedge funds make more money.
Right.
I like to joke that now I get to use my powers for good. We're helping average investors
Right.
invest their retirement savings in a low-cost, low-tax manner. Because I had knowledge of investing philosophy and principle, because I understood how the market worked, and because I had a good sense for the way that the average investor should be allocating their retirement portfolio, I was able to go join a startup that's in high demand out in Silicon Valley and add value right away. Now, if I'd have been trying to go work for somewhere, a startup outside of my domain, like a Snapchat or a Slack or something, companies that people want to go work for, I don't really have enough of the background and the domain knowledge to add as much value. So we really think that fintech is a great opportunity for students that want to go to business school and then parlay that into a career in tech or an early stage technology itself.
That's terrific. Talk to me a little bit, if you could, Steve, about, I'm going to go a little bit off what we'd originally agreed we would talk about, but given that it's Veterans Day, I know you've done a lot of work with veterans in the tech space.
Yeah.
How have you found fintech to be a place that is not just appealing but welcoming to people with military backgrounds?
I think to Daniel's point about experience in financial services and just wanting to do a bigger social mission than maybe you did before in your previous career. That's what fintech does, and that's what the technology behind a lot of these fintech startups is enabling is how can we take services that were probably only previously accessible to the ultra-rich or the people in the know, and how can we distribute that and make it fair and accessible to everyone? And I think that social aspect of it really appeals to people who have service-minded backgrounds, and veterans are clearly in that category. So although a lot of my colleagues at Wharton are interested in going to traditional professional services firms, they're asking me, hey, what's this fintech thing all about? Because I want to use this as a force for good on Wall Street. So
Right.
my friends who are doing investment banking, or that maybe they're doing management consulting and focusing on practices in financial services, they come to us because not only are we a resource for people who have previous experience in financial services, but we also have an education platform where we're putting out really good information for people who just want to learn more. So it depends on, it doesn't matter what where you are on the value chain as far as how much you know about finance or technology. We'll get you up to speed no matter what your experience is. So that's really kind of where the vets fit in, is how can this be used for good because we're service oriented, and how could I learn more so I can apply this to my job in professional services?
That is terrific. So I want to shift gears a little bit away from talking about fintech as an industry to the experience of really starting an organization on campus, right? One of the things that we talk about a lot when we're out meeting with prospective students and talking to them is Wharton's a big place. There's room for everybody, lots of room to be entrepreneurial. How did you find that experience as you started into this? And it doesn't just have to be the highlights. You can talk about lowlights a little bit. But if there's any insight you want to give, I don't know who wants to take that first. You want Daniel?
Yeah, so we've been in this unique position that because Wharton Fintech was the first student-led fintech initiative, we've had a lot of inbound from students at other schools that have said, hey, we got here, we don't have anything going on, but we've heard you guys shouting and screaming from the rooftops from your blog and on Twitter and social media. Do you have any advice for us? And so we're seeing these grassroots efforts popping up in other places, and we get to ask students, we're happy to tell you about our experience and teach you what we've learned, but what's going on at your school? What are some of your challenges? And so we've got a pretty interesting sort of observational data set to give us some idea about what makes Wharton a bit unique. And I think one of those things that makes Wharton unique is that everything here is very student-led.
Yes.
Right? It was very natural for us to, in this environment, decide, here's something we're going to do. As long as students want us to do it, and the industry that we want to add value to wants us to do it, Wharton's going to let us run with that. We don't need to get the permission of the administration or a faculty member. Now, we can't go out there and do anything that would damage the Wharton brand, and we're not doing that. We're adding value for all of our stakeholders. The point of the story here is that as long as there's something that you want to do and that your classmates want to do, and you can convince people to join your cause, Wharton's a great place to do that. And I think that our success has shown that you can really come here and accomplish whatever goal it is you set out for yourself. We didn't come here looking to start an organization like this. It turned out that in order to accomplish our goals and to help our peers and our classmates accomplish our goals, that this was, as far as we could tell, the best way to do it.
Right.
And I think the proof is in the pudding. Steve talked about the statistics and the data earlier. But we were able to identify latent demand, as he mentioned. People wanted this to happen, and we did it in a way that we felt was adding value. And we ask our members all the time, is what we're doing valuable for you?
Right.
What are we missing? And Steve mentioned the education part. We just polled our members, and it turns out the number one thing people want from us is just to learn. We have a lot of members who actually aren't going into fintech.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going into traditional finance, maybe they're going to be management consultants, maybe they're going back to their old job for a little bit, and then they want to explore new opportunities. But they understand that there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here. Maybe they want to get into tech or early stage startups, and they see their background, as I mentioned, as a way to get in there, but not right away. And so we provide an opportunity there for people to learn, if that's what they want, to get internships and jobs, if that is what they want, or to help build their own personal brand on Twitter and through publishing their thoughts on the blog. So we've been really happy with the flexibility, the autonomy, and the opportunity that we've had in this environment. And like I said, we've spoken to a lot of our peers at other schools, and there I think there's a lot more structure.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Some people prefer structure, but for the kind of thing that we're doing, this environment is, I think, ideal.
And we greatly appreciate it. Building on that a little bit, I'm wondering, Steve, if you wouldn't mind talking about the resources within not just Wharton, but the university that you've brought to bear on your organization, and how you've been able to, work across schools, and how that's influenced your initiative here.
I think clearly the greatest resource of Wharton Fintech are the people and the energy that they're bringing to what we're doing. And Daniel and I both thought from the beginning that this needs to be a collaborative, interdisciplinary effort, because MBAs aren't the ones that are pushing the fintech industry forward. There are lots of different stakeholders. Clearly, you have to be able to coexist and co-work with engineers. So we've, from the beginning, have tried to work with organizations like the Dining Philosophers, which is the undergrad computer science group, some of the fantastic undergrads who are doing dual degrees, the both management and technology degrees, the Jerome Fisher M&T program, which is just fantastic. And we've identified specific faculty members who are particularly interested in digital technology revolutions, like Kartik Hosnager, Jules Van Binsbergen, who's a trained analyst in securities, and with experience at Goldman Sachs, and coming from Stanford. When we first approached him about starting Wharton Fintech, he got it immediately. So having the backing of individuals who say, yes, we think this is a great idea and we're willing to support you in anything you need is great. When you do need to provide some structure and to get some top cover on maybe something that an initiative that you really want to push and involve the administration. So that's been really fantastic for us. Another organization that's been instrumental both from a financial and from an advisory standpoint for us is the Wharton Research Data Services. So WORDS for us was our founding sponsor, and give us money so that we could go out and do great things and bring great speakers and have great events here on campus. And for WORDS, which is a fantastic organization that provides data to institutions and universities all over the world, financial data, for them, they just wanted to understand the industry better through us. So we were kind of providing them with information, with access to some of our network, and in return they provided us with a generous sponsorship and resources and to include full access to their 200 terabytes? 200
Wow.
terabytes of financial data, which is just amazing. So
That's great.
those are just some of the things that
Yeah.
we've been able to access on campus.
That's awesome. Yes, Daniel.
The one thing I'll add to that, and Steve really did a great job of covering all the bases, but the comment I made earlier about us being given the freedom to do what we want is true, but when we need the support, it's there.
Right.
As an example, we've developed a relationship with Wharton Marketing Communications. And so we led our track. We run these career tracks every semester. So far, we've done New York and San Francisco. Last week, we were in New York, meeting with a bunch of really cool fintech startups, big companies, and investors. And Wharton Communications let us take over their Instagram feed.
Oh, that's
So we
fun.
were
Yeah.
shooting pictures out of all the companies we were meeting with and getting feedback from the community online. And so we do get support. When we're doing things that we want help with, the help is there.
Right.
All you have to do is ask.
That's great. So shifting gears a little bit from that as well, let's talk about careers, and let's talk about some of the initiatives that you've both undertaken individually and collectively around careers. And what advice do you have for prospective students who are watching this, who are interested in fintech as a career?
Fintech as a career. So as we've sort of alluded to here, fintech's pretty broad,
Yes.
right? Which is funny because when we started doing this, people said, is that a little bit of a niche club?
Right.
Isn't that kind of a bit too focused? No. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so depending on where you want to be, I think will determine the details here. But at a very high level, you want to think about yourself as a product. Which sounds a little bit objectifying, but that's not really what I mean here. You have to understand what is going on in whatever industry it is that you're looking to get into. and figure out how your prior skill set, in addition to the things that you're going to learn when you come to Wharton, can help you fit in there. So I had a relatively specific goal. I wanted to go do data science. I had a relatively technical background before that was very focused on sort of tackling one specific type of problem. But I wanted to go do data science because that's applying the same kind of skills to a much broader set of issues. I was able to take classes here. I took statistics courses. I took courses in probability models in marketing, classes that were very specific to what I wanted to do. So I got those hard skills. But I think more important than that, I was able to build my personal brand. Part of that was through the work that we were doing for Wharton Fintech. Getting my thoughts out into our blog, engaging with the founders and investors and thought leaders in fintech over Twitter,
Right.
which is, by the way, one of the lowest overhead forms of communication. Right? If I were to send an email to Mark Andreessen, he's probably not going to reply. It's a lot of work for him to reply to that email. If I tweet to him, it's really easy for him to reply because he's only allowed to use 140 characters. So you get to engage with people and get their ideas and have conversations that you wouldn't normally get to have. So I think Steve will agree with me here, but Twitter is a great tool for enterprise recruiting
Yes.
for MBA students. But building your personal brand is super important. You can come here with no background in whatever it is you want to do and build those hard skills, but you still need to let people know you have them. And you still need to let people know your thoughts and your passions and your philosophies. Because if you're going to go work in fintech, a lot of these companies are startups, or they're in growth stage, or you're investing, which is part of a small team. Even if you're going to work for a bigger company, the innovation group is probably a smaller part of that company. And those are the environments, I think, in which a lot of those sort of softer skills, the cultural fit, your personality become even more important. Do you buy into the mission? Are you doing this because you think it's going to be great economically, or are you doing it because you want to help bring down the cost of remittances for people in emerging economies? Do you want to help bring sophisticated financial advice to everybody, regardless of how much money they have? Do you buy into these things? And so getting your opinions out there, the things that you believe and the things that get you fired up, are a surprisingly effective way of not only sort of getting those first touch points with the companies you want to engage with, but really selling yourself.
Right.
So personal brand is key.
Love that. Steve, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Daniel really did a great job talking about personal brand, and that's something that we think a lot about here at Wharton, not just at Wharton Fintech, but in general. Like, how can Wharton help you? I wouldn't say remake your image, but how can you improve on what you've done already and really enter the industry that you want to enter, hitting the ground running and with a great 2 years of experience. One of the best resources that you have for getting a job, in addition to Wharton Fintech, is MBA Career Management, and particularly Michelle Hopping and Maria Halpern who are focused on entrepreneurship and startups. They're the real deal, and they know everybody in the space.
Right.
So, and not only that, Maria sits in San Francisco at our campus there. So she's talking to these people every single day, trying to understand the value of an MBA at an early stage company and the delta between when we start school and when we finish and where we have to make up ground. So the conversations that she has, that Michelle has with these organizations, these startups, are invaluable because now we benefit from both the alumni resources that we have and also MBA Career Management, who is helping us start the conversation with these companies. And we're really excited by actually classifying fintech as a sub-industry within MBA Career Management, which is never done before. And because of that, we're not saying that necessarily fintech is now the biggest and we're the reason for this, but reclassifying some of these startups into fintech startups has actually yielded fintech as being the largest sub-industry of job offers last year, which is really exciting because this is really why we're here. We're here to get jobs and learn, but we're here to get jobs eventually.
Right. Oh, that's terrific. I am going to ask Shannon now if we have any questions from the audience.
Yes. While you all have been talking, there has been an audience out there, and they have been sending in a few questions. The first one, Daniel, is probably an easy one, but some folks are interested to know, how many followers on Twitter do you have?
Me personally or Wharton Fintech?
Wharton Fintech.
Wharton Fintech has something like 2,674. Last time I checked. I guess that's pretty close.
That was just before we went on camera.
Just before we went on
Yeah.
camera, I fired out a quick tweet.
Good.
But I think that's roughly where we were at. And we were at 0 14 months ago.
That's terrific.
And I-
And follow at Wharton Fintech, and you can see the exact amount.
Yes.
I suspect your
plug.
numbers will increase today. Steve, as you were just talking about careers, I'm interested. Some of the folks are interested to know a little bit more about some of the types of companies where students have worked for either this past summer or are planning on joining full time post Wharton.
Yeah, I mean, we recently have been getting a lot of inbound from companies who have a lot of interest in hiring MBAs and engineers and undergrads from Wharton and Penn. And actually, the demand from the company side is higher than we can actually put people into for students. So it's a pretty good problem to have, but we need more people to come to Wharton so that we can put them into cool jobs in the fintech space. So some of the companies that we're talking to every day about with high signal and high interest in hiring Wharton students, Venmo, Wealthfront, thanks to Daniel, Apple Pay, Common Bond, Prosper, Movin. These are organizations that are in the news each and every day. I mean, if you Google them and follow them on Twitter, you'll see that they're raising lots of capital. They're expanding rapidly, releasing new products all the time. And what Wharton, particularly MBAs, are really, really good at is adding value to an organization and helping them scale. And this is something that, we've been kind of developing these ideas over for a long period of time. Where is a great place for Wharton MBA to add value? Is it in business operations? Is it data science? Is it product management? And we polled the students at Wharton or in Wharton Fintech and asked them, where are the jobs that you want to go into in fintech? And interestingly, the numbers bear out analytics being very popular, investing, and we recently on our latest trek went to go visit Bain Capital Ventures and Box Group, two very, very active investors in the fintech space in New York City, and analytics, investing, data, and product management, which is really interesting for us because that's not sort of the typical demographic of Wharton students. And we hope that we're providing good resources and making good connections for these people to get these opportunities. So
That's terrific.
yeah, sure.
Quick follow-up to what
Yes.
Steve said there. Listed a bunch of really cool companies. The other thing that we found is, inevitably, when we talk to a hot fintech startup, either that we engaged on Twitter or that one of our members asked us to get in touch with on their behalf, there's always a Wharton alumni there.
Yeah.
It seems a
That's
lot of,
great, yeah.
Wharton has this well-deserved pedigree for traditional finance.
Right.
And because we see fintech as the future of finance, we like to say that in the future, all banks will be technology companies. A lot of our, the people that came before us have gone into traditional finance and said, there's something going on here. I want to take my career in a different direction. I want to pivot, and I want to go into fintech. And they've sort of laid the groundwork for us. I'm an example of that. I'm working for a Wharton alum on the data science team at Wealthfront. I worked there over the summer, and I'll be going back there after I'm finished with Wharton. And he's a great example of someone that came to Wharton, had a consulting background,
Right.
a liberal arts major in undergrad, from out of the country, and became a data scientist at one of the hottest startups in Silicon Valley.
Very cool.
So you can do it.
Right.
And there's an alumni network out there. Wharton Fintech has a network. And this first batch of students from the last summer spent 12 weeks at some amazing companies.
That's a great answer. Thank you both for that. Shannon, is there another?
There have been several comments coming in about, and it's probably a good final question, but several folks have been commenting about how active Wharton Fintech has been in its first year. And in this second year, sort of almost at the halfway point, what are your goals for the end of this second year?
Besides graduating? We're really excited about turning over Wharton Fintech to an excited, energetic, and frankly, probably a lot smarter than Daniel and I, group of leaders who came to Wharton because of Wharton Fintech. So this was really exciting for us, and we met a lot of these folks on Welcome Weekend, and we talked to them about their backgrounds and their interests and how they wanted to get involved, and Wharton Fintech really scratched their itch. So we're very excited about turning over and passing the torch into very capable hands. We've had a lot of interesting initiatives this year that have really pushed the envelope as far as our content and relationships and our network. And I particularly want to mention just some of the conference engagements that we've been able to have internationally and here in the U.S. Being able to speak at conferences like Sibos, that's put on by Swift. And Daniel and I also did a talk in Copenhagen, so we've gotten a lot of really great exposure because of this. But more so than that, it's really spread the Wharton brand and Wharton Fintech all over the world, which is really cool. So I'll let Daniel talk about the podcast because he's been really, really instrumental in getting that off the ground.
Yeah. Just to reiterate everything Steve said there strategically, we want to make sure that we're bringing in a generation of leaders into the organization. They're gonna sustain Wharton Fintech. We want to come back in 5 or 10 years and see this thing still helping bring value to the student body, bring value to the industry, and connecting Wharton students with the companies that are reshaping financial services. At a tactical level, the podcast is something we're very excited about. So as we've also discussed in this conversation, content was key to the Wharton Fintech strategy. It's how we connected with the outside world. It's how we gave our peers a platform to have their voice heard and to get their thoughts and their opinions heard. The podcast is sort of the next evolution of that. The podcast medium has taken off in recent years. It's a very informationally dense way of communicating thought, and it's also a very low overhead way of engaging thought leaders in the industry. It's not a big deal for a VC or a founder or a CEO to jump on a call with you for 20 minutes and chat about their product and their market and their vision and their thoughts about the future of finance. You get to engage with them. Right. It's a very genuine interaction, and you get information out of these people that they wouldn't normally share with you on a traditional informational interview. And then you get to put that out to the world, and you get to put your stamp on it, put your name on it, and you get to amplify your reach through the Wharton Fintech platform. So the podcast is something we're very excited about. The adoption has been much higher, much faster than the blog was. So for those of you out there that are following us on social media and have been reading the blog, keep an eye out for the podcast because we think it's going to be bigger and better than anything we've done so far.
That is terrific. Well, on that note, I will thank you both, not just for your time today, but for the personal and professional investment you've made in Wharton Fintech. It is exciting for me to have watched it from almost day one through today, and the work that you've been able to do brings so much value, not just to prospective students as we're talking to today, but also to future Wharton generations. So thank you both very much. Thank you to everyone who participated remotely as well. We're delighted to have had you watch our presentation today and look forward to being in touch in the future. Thanks very much.